Tiger fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Sports Show. I'm your co-host, Joseph Hastings. Joining me is Matt Connolly, who's fresh back from his trip to Syracuse, New York. Got to be in attendance for Clemson's 17-14 road victory over Syracuse on Friday night. Matt, first of all, how you doing, man?
A little tired, but hanging in there. Yeah, I wasn't there too long and early morning flight. But yeah, fun game. Glad to be back and talking with you.
So you flew into Syracuse Friday morning and then you flew back Saturday morning, right?
Yeah. Not a ton to do in Syracuse, and yeah, it was just a quick trip. I thought that would probably be the best thing, is just kind of get in and out. Late game, obviously, so just get in and out and make it back home.
Absolutely, and I got to do a little bit of traveling myself. Went on a little recruiting trip to Atlanta and also Alabama as well. So yeah, we've both been putting in the miles there on the road and through the air. But let's get right into it. This is what everyone is tuning in to see. Our recap, our reaction to Clemson's victory on Friday. Improved their record to 4-2, but Matt, it was just more of the same coming out of the bye week. What were your overall takeaways from Clemson's win?
Yeah, I think there was some optimism after the Boston College game when you look at putting up over 400 yards of offense, 200 rushing, 200 passing. Probably the best game the offense had played this year. Now you have a bye week to try to get some guys healthy and look at some scheme stuff. I know that they wanted to go back and kind of evaluate themselves and say, okay, what's working, what's not, what can we implement to really improve and give ourselves a chance to build off of that Boston College game. And it didn't really happen. I mean, there were some positives for sure. I thought DJ played pretty well, honestly, overall. His receivers didn't help him a ton, but really just overall as an offense, just another poor game, another game where Clemson scores fewer than 20 points. They haven't reached 20 points in regulation all year against an FBS team. Mm-hmm. I believe it's the first time since 1994 that they've gone 5 straight games without reaching 20 points in regulation against an FBS team. So it's honestly, and David Hill had a stat from ESPN on this as well, that Clemson has the 4th fewest points against Power 5 teams in the college football playoff era through their first 5 games. So, I mean, it's a historically bad offense, which is not something that I think any of us really expected going into the year. But that's just kind of where Clemson is right now.
Yeah, honestly, coming after the bye week, we heard DJ say, this offense is ready to explode. We saw Jordan McFadden say that, they feel like they're close. James Skalski said, let's put the 3-2 record behind us. We still have a season to play for. And they obviously still do. It wasn't like they lost this game, but I don't want to say this is as close to a loss as you can get. But heading into the season, you and I both expected this one to be a pretty easy victory for Clemson, for it to be no issues whatsoever. And once again, it's coming down to the last drive, and you're on the edge of your seat if you're a Clemson fan. And I initially thought, late in the fourth quarter was writing my 10 most noteworthy stats from the game piece. And I was like, okay, Clemson's going to win comfortably for once. And then a 62-yard touchdown pass to Pena from Schrader just makes it 17-14. And once again, it came down to a missed field goal by Syracuse. And it led to Clemson winning the game in a game that should have been a double-digit victory for them. So, yeah, just another one where Clemson fans are on the edge of their seat. Matt, how surprised were you that after a bye week, after being able to reassess everything, try and fix up some of those issues, that they came out somewhat flat again on offense?
Yeah, not overly surprised, just because I think, and we've said all year, it's not going to be something that's an easy fix. That's you're just going to flip a switch and all of a sudden it's better. But a little bit surprised that, they scored 14 points in the first half. And then you're thinking, hey, maybe they're going to get going a little bit. Maybe, they're going to finish with 28 points or 30 points or, at least win comfortably. And then the next thing you know, it's a 3-point game and Syracuse has a ball late, driving with a chance to tie or win the game. So, I think, and we've talked about this all year as well, but it's just unfair to this defense to keep expecting them every single week to keep teams out of the end zone, to keep coming up with these late goal line stands. This defense is missing several key players. It was out without its top cornerback Friday and Andrew Booth, already without Tyler Davis and Brian Brzee, a couple of the best defenders on the team. So you have guys dropping, leaving the game, and just expect Clemson the defense to just keep picking up the slack every week is just unfair to that unit. And now you're going to play a Pitt team that's been scoring on pretty much everyone all year. So that's not going to get any easier for the defense, and certainly doesn't look like it's getting any better for the offense anytime soon at this point.
You know, what's interesting about this offense is that last year in every single game besides the Boston College game, they won by at least double digits against FBS opponents. This season, they have not won a game by more than 10 points or 10 points or more against an FBS opponent. So, you know, this isn't a team where you can mark a victory for any opponent, essentially, besides the UConn game and maybe FSU. It's going to be a close game for the rest of the season. It feels like with every single matchup that they have. I want to get into.
Hey, and I was just going to say, hey, look at that. I mean, Florida State scored 33 points on Syracuse. You know, they scored twice as many on Syracuse as Clemson did. So I wouldn't say that. I mean, obviously, Florida State doesn't have the talent Clemson does, but neither of any of these other teams Clemson's played this year. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know that there's any game on the schedule right now where you say, hey, yeah, Clemson should win that one pretty easily other than the UConn game.
Yeah, and it's funny. In our second episode, I had said that, you know, we have to keep an eye out for the Syracuse and Pittsburgh games. And you had corrected me. You said, no, just the Pittsburgh game. And I went along with it because I didn't want to make myself look like a fool in retrospect. But I had been thinking, you know, that far back about that this team for the rest of the season, it was going to be like this. It was going to be these kind of close, ugly, tough wins. And it feels like it's going to be that way the rest of the season. I don't even think it's going to be like that against Pittsburgh, in my opinion. I think it could potentially be a blowout. We'll get into that game a little bit further down the line. But with the offense exploding the way it has for the Panthers, as you mentioned, it really feels like that could be a trap game for Clemson. Not necessarily a trap game, but it could be a tough one for them.
Yeah, it could be a tough one for sure. And to be fair, Syracuse at the time, I think it just like scored 7 points against Rutgers. So I wasn't a true believer in Syracuse at the time. But yeah, definitely, you know, I was feeling a little different about that game after seeing them play Wake Forest really tough, seeing Sean Tucker really emerge. But yeah, no, you were all over it. You nailed it. But yeah, I was, to be fair, I think they had just gotten beat by Rutgers. So I wasn't quite a believer in Syracuse yet.
Honestly, it wasn't that I was a believer in Syracuse. I just don't believe in this offense.
Yeah, that's fair for sure.
Even against SC State, which is their blowout victory of the season, it wasn't pretty. You know, there were 3 turnovers in that game. I believe DJ had an interception and just miscues continuing. And that should have been the game where you come after the Georgia loss and you're like, okay, let's correct these issues. Let's get the offense back going. Maybe score 70 points, make it comfortable. And it wasn't like that. I feel like that's the game that is a little bit defining of the season in a sense, in terms of the lack of potential explosive plays in this offense, which we saw once again on Friday.
Yeah, and I'll add that, you know, I think Clemson might have missed an opportunity in that game just to leave the starters in a little bit, just let that group get some continuity, see if you could just get feeling good about themselves, put up some points, let DJ get some more work with this receiving core. So, you know, it's easy to say now, hindsight's 2020, but just wanted to mention that as well.
That's a really great point right there. Let's switch on over. We're going to get to DJ and the wide receivers a little bit, but let's start off with the offensive line. I missed the first half of this game driving back from Alabama. You obviously were there. You got to see everything up close. What'd you think about the offensive line play? You know, what were your takeaways there?
Yeah, it wasn't good. I mean, they were really struggling with just some twists and some movement from Syracuse. And, you know, that's something we talked about heading into the game. And we had Eric McLean on last week, and something he preached as well is that, you know, Syracuse moves around a lot on defense, and they're going to bring guys from all over. And you've really got to dial in and be focused to pick all that up. And Clemson just really struggled there. I mean, there were guys running free at DJ. I thought he did a really nice job, honestly, of, you know, staying on his feet at times, avoiding some rushes at times, and getting some balls away at least, and not taking big losses. I think Clemson allowed a couple of sacks, but it could have been much worse if he wasn't doing such a good job of kind of avoiding some pressure. But yeah, I mean, you know, and the offensive line and the coaching staff, credit to the coaching staff this week in this regard, and that, you know, they weren't messing around this week. I mean, if you allowed a pressure on a bad play, you were out of there. You know, Walker Parks got subbed out several times for Mitchell Mays. There were some other guys subbing in and out of the line. So I think that was something that was different this week. And that's something I asked Tony Elliott about after the game. And he said, absolutely, they're going to start making guys more accountable. So, if you miss an assignment, miss a rush, whatever it might be, they weren't going to hesitate to get you out of the game. And you saw that yesterday.
How much of Hunter Rayburn being out at center and then, having to be replaced at that position as well impact Clemson's offensive line play? Because that's obviously a huge thing, Mason Trotter having to get the start at center.
Yeah, for sure. It impacted it some. But, the coaching staff wasn't making excuses after the game. And I think that it made it harder in some ways, but really Trotter, I didn't think was a big issue. I thought he played pretty well, honestly, for most of the game. He had one bad snap that went over DJ's head and was nearly a disaster with a turnover. Clemson was fortunate to get it back and ended up punting on the drive and could at least flip the field. But outside of that, I thought he held up pretty well in there. So, it like I said, it obviously affected them some, but I thought some other guys around him kind of struggled some too.
Let's get on going to DJ. Of course, he's every single episode that we're going to talk about pretty much is going to revolve around DJ in some sense because of the position he plays, the struggles that he's had. Hearing the game and then also being able to watch it seems like his wide receivers didn't help him out too much with the drops. But once again, under 200 yards passing. This was actually the first game in which he had more than 20 completions on the season. So definitely a little bit more effective in the pass game. Had that excellent 19-yard touchdown pass to Joe Ngata. Had a 23-yard pass to Bo Collins as well. What was your assessment of DJ's play on Friday?
Yeah, Dabo said after the game he thought it was his best game. And I would probably agree. I mean, he completed better than 60% of his passes. He made some nice throws. And that's better than 60% with several balls that were dropped.
Yeah.
He easily could have been over 200. They had penalties that wiped away plays. They had a missed assignment on a screen throwback to the tight end where Dabo said they had 3 offensive linemen out to block one guy, and they didn't get a hand on him, which just you can't have 3 on 1 and not touch a guy, and he ends up making the tackle. So he didn't get a ton of help around him, but I thought he played pretty well at times. He still missed a couple throws. I'm sure he would like to have back. One in particular, I think he kind of bounced one out to Joseph Ngata, who was open, but on a little curl route. But other than that, I thought he really did a pretty nice job. Had some decent runs as well. Didn't get used as much in the running game, but like I said, did a good job avoiding pressure. So still plenty of room for improvement for sure from him. But overall, I thought he did a decent job and just needed more help around him.
I'm not going to ask you to go into the minds of the players here who are, suffering these drops, especially Justin Ross there, but it just seems very uncharacteristic for Ross to, especially in that first drive, dropped one right near midfield, went down with a little bit of injury, but returned. That's just an uncharacteristic play. Davis Allen had a drop as well, and this has been a consistent theme throughout the season. I mean, that can't be placed on DJ. Those are, for the most part, have been well-thrown balls that have been dropped throughout the year. What do you think is the issue there? I mean, is it just lack of concentration? And
gotta have one too. Yeah, I asked Dabo after the game, and he said it's just fundamentals and making the plays that are there. He didn't really have necessarily an exact reason why it keeps happening. But, I mean, it's been an issue all year from the tight end and receiver position. I don't know if it's anything with the chemistry not there, not used to catching balls from DJ. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely something that's been happening way too much, and still 6 games into the year, still just happening too often. So I don't really know what the issue is there, but something's certainly off.
What about the running backs group? We had a subscriber on ClemsonSports.com say that the gap between Kobe Pace and Will Shipley may not be as big as we initially thought it was. Especially at least what I thought it was coming after the Georgia Tech game. What did you think about Kobe Pace and what he did against not only Syracuse, but the game before against Boston College?
Yeah, I thought Kobe Pace and Phil Moffitt both did a really nice job. Moffitt had several catches out of the backfield. I say several, a couple of nice catches out of the backfield on swing passes where he was able to get in the open field and get some tough yards. I thought both of those guys ran hard. They didn't have a ton of running room. I mean, I think Clemson finished with around 116 or so rushing yards. which, Tony Elliott said after the game was really disappointing in the fact that Syracuse was really trying to play to take away the pass. And so, when that's happening, and it's the same thing that happened against Georgia Tech and against Georgia, is when teams are doing that and, playing three-man fronts, you've got to make them pay. You've got to be able to pound the ball in there and pick up 7, 8, 9 yards and get them out of that. And that just didn't happen enough. I thought in particular when Clemson went under center, I think it happened probably 5 or 6 times, 4 or 5 times, something like that. When Clemson went under center, they were doing a nice job of just making some nice, creating some nice holes, having some nice reads from the running backs, finding some holes. So, yeah, it wasn't a great game with a rushing attack overall, but I thought the running backs did a nice job.
Switch on over to the other side of the ball and talk about what Syracuse was able to do against Clemson's rush defense. Sean Tucker, one of the best running backs in the country, the most productive running back in the country up until this point, had 157 rushing yards on 22 attempts, including a 54-yard rush. I'm not really going to blame Clemson's defense too much here, Matt. Just with everything that they've gone through, all the injuries that they've suffered, I can't really hold it against them too much. But overall, what were your thoughts? Are there any concerns that you would have going forward about what Tucker and company were able to do against them?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, not huge concerns. First of all, that guy's incredible. I mean, we heard about him all week, and you can kind of see on his highlights, he's a pretty effective player. But watching him in person, man, he's tough. He's super fast. He gets in the open field, and he's really hard to catch. He put a move on Nolan Turner on that long run and was able to get by him, who's obviously a veteran safety and one of the best safeties in the ACC. So really, really impressed with Sean Tucker and what he was able to do. And I know some Syracuse fans are talking Heisman and that kind of stuff. I'm not sure that he's ready for that, and that has a lot to do with just Syracuse as a team and their record and everything. But hey, I mean, he's a freshman, second-year freshman with the COVID year, but yeah, I mean, he's a freshman. He's going to be around for a couple more years at least. So wouldn't be surprised at all if later in his career he's a All-American type guy, and possibly even this year, he's right there among the national leaders in rushing yards per game. So yeah, really, really, really good player. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you mentioned all the injuries: Tyler Davis, Brian Brazil, Andrew Booth, who's a great tackler on the edge. He's out. I mean, I think that it's understandable that they were able to have some success running the ball with arguably the best running back in the country. So not a huge issue there, I don't think, with the rush defense.
Yeah, Tucker's been dominant throughout the whole year. He's going to be a thorn in the side of Clemson going forward next year, potentially the year after that. Who knows? But yeah, he's going to be he's going to be in the conversation there. Like you said, I don't think it's going to be Heisman conversation, but definitely All-American discussions will be his way too.
Hey, and I want to make one other point too. Garrett Schrader had done a great job against everyone of running. Syracuse quarterback had been running on everyone, had a ton of success, and he really had no luck at all running on Clemson's defense or passing. I mean, there were a few opportunities in the passing game where, he just missed some open throws. That Syracuse passing attack, other than the one long play, was honestly kind of a disaster. It was ugly. I mean, they were, it looked like at times it was like a miracle if they were completing just even simple passes. So that portion of their game was ugly for sure. But yeah, Clemson did a great job containing him in the rushing game.
Yep, you jumped right ahead of me on that one there, because coming into this game, he had over 400 yards rushing on the season, had 178 against Wake Forest, and had 137 against Florida State. So, and those are like Sean Tucker type numbers there that he was putting up, and Clemson was able to hold him to only 6 yards rushing on 7 attempts. I thought that was, they really made it a point to say, you know what, we're going to stop him. We're going to make sure that we're going to eliminate one of those 2 rushing attacks by Syracuse's offense. We're not going to let Tucker and Schrader explode for big games on the ground. And honestly, if Schrader was able to have his way and get 60, 70, 80 yards, who knows if that would have changed the outcome of the game. But, Sean Tucker got loose for the 54-yard one. But other than that, he was averaging 5 yards per rush. So I thought it was actually a pretty good game by Clemson's rush defense, all things considered, including those injuries. Speaking of which, I mean, Andrew Booth out for this game. And on the offensive side of the ball, Frank Ladson, EJ Williams, we mentioned Hunter Rayburn as well. And that's to go on top of Bresee Davis. Braden Galloway was also out for this game. And also Will Shipley, of course. Just, I saw a couple of your Twitter comments. following the post about those players being out, and one of the people said that this team feels snake bitten. It really does feel that way, right, Matt?
Yeah, in some ways for sure. I mean, they just can't catch a break injury wise. You finally feeling good about your offensive line after the Boston College performance, and then the center who really stepped up now is in COVID protocol. So yeah, it's hard. I think the receiving core has been pretty banged up all year. Troy Salato didn't get in the game, or I don't believe he did, but he was a guy that hadn't been traveling, and that I think they were trying to redshirt and probably still will redshirt. But he travels for the game and is out there warming up. You're throwing to Bo Collins, a freshman. He's playing a good bit of snaps. Dakari Collins traveled as well. So, I thought another bright spot, and he didn't get a lot of opportunities, but I thought Joe looked explosive. On the grab he got going over the middle, made a nice play and was able to pick up a first down on that. So he's a guy I'd like to see get more involved. But yeah, I mean, just can't seem to catch a break with injuries. So, it's weird. I mean, Clemson's been pretty fortunate the last few years with injuries, and for whatever reason this year, it just seems like it's just kind of when it rains, it pours in some ways. And that's kind of what's happening right now.
Yep, that's absolutely happening. And they're going to have to overcome those issues, those injuries. And it isn't just in like one position group. Obviously wide receiver has been the most hurt. But, the defensive line, the defensive back group, it's just been everywhere. Matt, before we jump off the Syracuse game and kind of go into a little bit of a season outlook through 6 games thus far, I want to kind of mention some stats to you here that I found a little bit interesting. Syracuse outgained Clemson on the night by 42 total yards. They ran 6 more total plays than them. Both teams went 5 of 15 on third down. But, probably the most interesting stat was that Clemson had the ball for 32 minutes and 59 seconds. That was the first time all season they've won the time of possession battle. So, Matt, what did you think of Clemson finally being able to win the time of possession battle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, obviously a positive. I mean, the defense has already been getting worn down some games this year, and it's hard to blame them. They've been on the field so much. So, the offense being able to stay on the field a little bit at times. I think some of that was going under center and having some success and extending drives was good. And then just the defense being able to get off the field and they're doing a nice job on third down. I think Syracuse was 5 of 15 on third down. So doing a nice job there of getting off the field when they had opportunities to. But yeah, I mean, I think that definitely was key, late in the game. It just tried to make sure that defense was still fresh late and not playing so many plays and being on the field so much early on in the game.
Yeah, definitely a stark comparison to what we've seen before in the past from Clemson's offense. Just finally being able to control the ball, move it downfield, have some sustaining drives. I want to kind of go into a little bit of a season outlook, nothing too in depth. We already, during the bye week, did a kind of an assessment of what we saw thus far, a game-by-game prediction. But, through 6 games, what are your thoughts on Clemson, this football team, offense, defense, everything?
Yeah, I think this is just how they're going to have to win games. I think it's just going to have to be an ugly, low-scoring, grind it out, try to find a way to win. And that's kind of what Dabo said last night. He said we'd love to score a lot of points, but right now that's hard for them to do. So you're probably just going to have some more of these kind of games. Now, obviously, next week at Pitt, probably going to have to score. I mean, you're going to have to find a way to score some points. You're probably going to have to find a way to score 24, 28, 30 points just because Kenny Pickett and that offense has been putting up points on everyone all year. So that's going to be a tough game. I think the Clemson offense is going to have to figure out some things. Obviously, Pitt's defense isn't great by any stretch, but Clemson struggled with plenty of defenses aren't great by any stretch this year. So I think, and I asked Tony Elliott that last night too, just, going into this game, do you feel like you're really going to have to find a way to score some points? And he said, yeah, absolutely. We've got to figure out a way to put up more points on the board and stop putting it all on our defense.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said. This is going to be how Clemson's games look the rest of the season, minus the UConn game. In my opinion, it's just going to be very ugly. The offense isn't going to look like it's operating on all cylinders. I thought, I wasn't necessarily optimistic that this team was going to drop 40 a game like we've been accustomed to seeing, especially last season with Trevor Lawrence at the helm. But I thought they were going to at least be able to put up 27 points in this game, Matt. I predicted the score to be 27-14, I believe. I thought they were going to be able to get there, have be able to script some drives, coming out the gate, script about the first 15 to 20 plays, get some momentum going early on and let that continue throughout the rest of the game. But it just keeps on stalling. The offense just isn't operating on all cylinders. They're not clicking together well. If DJ throws a perfect ball, there's a drop by Justin Ross. If there's a perfect screenplay and there needs to be blockers in front, the blockers aren't able to get there in time, and there's a tackle made in the backfield. It just nothing is going right. There's no one part of the offense that you feel really great about right now. So I think it's going to look this way the rest of the season.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Syracuse isn't a bad defense. They've got some really good players. They obviously do a good job getting out after the quarterback, but they also gave up 33 points to a bad Florida State team. They gave up 40, albeit in overtime, to a Wake Forest offense is really good, but still that's 40 points and 34 points in regulation. So teams that had some success scoring on them this year. Same thing with Boston College. I mean, Missouri had put up some points on Boston College right before Clemson played them and finished with 19. So gonna have to figure out something.
Albany put up 24 points on Syracuse.
Right.
Clemson put up 17. It's just you would expect the offense to just do better, and especially coming off the bye week. Now, if this game had come right after the Boston College game and then you have a bye week after, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. If the offense looked the same way, but you just thought they would have been able to explode as they were kind of hoping to do, or at the very least cross 20 in regulation. But it still remains to be seen if they'll be able to do that the rest of the season. Let's get on over to kind of my wheelhouse a little bit, the recruiting side of things. That's something that people are really interested in right now. Which incoming recruits are going to be able to help out Clemson's team the most? I'm going to throw out a controversial one. Let's go Cade Klubnik. I don't know how controversial that may be now, may have been a little bit before the season, but I mean, do you envision Cade being able to potentially come in next year and challenge for a starting spot based off what we've seen from DJ?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think he at least has the chance to come in and maybe compete for that job. Maybe it helps out DJ a little bit in some ways and pushes him a little bit if he has another guy right there with him competing for that starting job in fall camp and kind of going into the season. It's tough to come in as a true freshman to play. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence did it. I'm not sure that Cade is Trevor Lawrence level, but he is a really good quarterback. I mean, he's made several really impressive plays in his high school career. If you go and look at his highlights, he can make any throw that you want him to. Arm strength isn't where DJ's is, but I think accuracy wise, he's been really good. And really no one, I mean, Dabo said DJ makes Trevor Lawrence's arm strength look average. So I don't think anyone necessarily has the arm strength DJ does, but that's not all that it takes to play quarterback. So yeah, I think at least he has a chance to come in and kind of get in the competition and maybe push DJ a little bit. And maybe that would be something that would be good for DJ.
It's really going to depend, in my opinion, when, asked about this question here, could Cade Klubnik come in and potentially be the starting quarterback next year? In my opinion, it's going to depend a lot on where DJ's mental state at. For me, just looking through these 6 games, watching him in person for 5 of them, it really feels like he's lacking confidence. Like that he isn't throwing with that same level of confidence that he threw when he was at St. John Bosco or even last year when filling in for Trevor Lawrence. He just isn't playing with that kind of moxie that you're accustomed to seeing him play with, that swagger. It's a lot of the simple things are just very hard for him right now. You talked about the ball that he threw in the ground to Joe Ngata. That was a route that you expect. I would expect myself to make. I would expect myself to make that kind of pass. It was 7 yards. It was a very open route. It was very easy for DJ to deliver on, and he just isn't getting there. The footwork isn't where it needs to be right now. He's going to have a lot of cleaning up to do in the offseason, but if with all things being even, and if both of them have the same kind of confidence level heading into spring camp next year, I would say DJ should be the starter going into the fall, just because he has everything that you need. He has all the tangibles, 6'5", 250, can throw the ball 80 yards. He has everything that you need from a quarterback, but just that confidence, the tweaking of the footwork, it's going to have to improve over the course of this season and in the off season as well.
Yeah. And I'll just add though, I mean, I thought he made some nice throws yesterday. It wasn't great. but and he obviously missed the one that got it. But the coaching staff said there were really two throws that they felt like he missed, which is not horrible. I mean, you're going to have some throws that you miss some games. I think it was maybe closer to 4 or so, if you ask me. Maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit, but I thought there were maybe a few more than 2. But still, I mean, I think that it was something to build off of what we saw with him today. Just, if his receivers catch some of those passes they drop, you're looking at right around 70-75% completion percentage instead of 62 or, in the low 60s. So, I think definitely Cade still has I think it's still worth having the conversation about, but I did see some positives from DJ. Outside of Cade, are there other guys you feel like could come in and help?
Absolutely. I don't know necessarily if Adam Randall or potentially Andre Green Jr. / Antonio Williams / Wesley Grimes at wide receiver would be able to come in, because I don't think that's the problem for Clemson right now. I think, it's more so along the offensive line. They have some young guys that they're going to need to develop there. There are some issues there that we have to discuss at quarterback and tight end too. So, I mean, I don't know if Josh Sapp, who I expect to commit to Clemson on Tuesday, 2022 tight end who's recently offered. I believe Clemson's going to be the choice. I don't know if he's going to be able to come in and light things up and change things for the better for them at tight end. I think he's a really interesting player in terms of being able to move him into the backfield, being able to kind of use him in some jet sweeps and in the slot, and also his blocking too. But I don't think he changes the course of Clemson's offense and makes them more explosive like an Oscar Delp or Jaleel Skinner would have. You also have to consider, just based on the departures of James Kowski and Balen Spector, Jaron Koenig, the linebacker commit for Clemson. I know they have some young linebackers in Trent Simpson and Barrett Carter, but Koenig is one that I'm paying attention to. He's a really athletic player. If you've been paying attention to the season thus far, he's playing quarterback. He's essentially playing de facto running back for them. He's been very explosive, while playing for Hayes High School. So I think he could potentially be someone who comes in, and not necessarily even if it's just linebacker, but heck, I mean, I think this kid is athletic enough to even play like a strong safety type role. You can really kind of move him at different spots in the field. So, also the defensive back depth that they have. Mike Reed has done an excellent job of recruiting, bringing in Jaden Lucas, Dalen Everett, Toriano Pride. They have some young guys there in Clemson, Fred Davis and Nate Wiggins, and you expect Andrew Booth to leave. So I think those guys will be able to help out in terms of adding some more depth. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting because the class isn't full right now. You have 12 commits. They're going after a lot of other guys right now. I didn't even bring up Trevor Etienne and the defensive lineman, Curtis Perry, Marvin Jones. So it remains to really be seen. But I honestly believe that if you were to say one player who could potentially make the biggest impact next year, when considering position, considering who's already there right now, I would have to say Cade. I think, he has the biggest potential to, obviously, because, how important quarterback is, to change Clemson, the direction of Clemson football going forward and get them back on track.
Yeah, and they, whether he comes in and helps next year, or even if it's 2 years from now and he's taken over as a sophomore or whatever it may be, I mean, they're going to need someone to come in and try to get this offense, and it's not all on the quarterback, as we said, but the next quarterback definitely needs to come in and be able to make some plays. And I think Cade's capable of doing that.
All right, Matt, let's switch on gears from recruiting to looking ahead to Clemson's schedule. Obviously, the big upcoming game is going to be against Pittsburgh. You can say this is the second biggest game of their season to this point. It's a road matchup. The good thing is they're going to have an extra day of rest. As the Syracuse game was on a Friday. This upcoming game will be on a Saturday. Now, what are the biggest storylines? What are the biggest things that you're paying attention to heading into this matchup?
Yeah, first of all, just getting healthy. I mean, you look at receiver with EJ Williams and Frank Ladson out. That's 2 of your top 4 guys. Hunter Rayburn being out in COVID protocol, unsure yet if he'll be able to go. I asked Dabo about that last night, but obviously it'll be nice to get him back. They expect to get Braden Galloway back, which would be a nice help. So, just getting some guys healthy, first of all. Andrew Booth Jr., you definitely want Andrew Booth Jr. playing against his Pitt passing attack and Kenny Pickett. So definitely getting him healthy as well. But yeah, I mean, you look at Pitt, they're averaging over 50 points a game. The Clemson defense the Georgia Tech defense that Clemson's offense struggled against. Pitt scored 52 on and had like 40 in the first half, just threw the ball all over the place. And obviously, Clemson, like I said, really struggled against that Georgia Tech defense. Pitt's really just kind of doing whatever they want on offense right now. And it all starts with quarterback Kenny Pickett, who's been one of the best quarterbacks in the country this year so far. So, I mean, he's you look at Pickett, he's completing better than 70% of his passes, averaging nearly 350 passing yards per game. He's got 19 touchdowns and 1 interception. That's before the game against Virginia Tech this weekend. So, man, I just think the offense is going to have to find some points and, try to and I know Jordan McFadden said this past week, the defense has had our back all year. Now we've got to pick them up. Well, the offense did pick Clemson up, the defense up against Syracuse, but definitely have another big opportunity to do it against Pitt. So, if the offense is going to find it, it needs to happen now because otherwise Clemson could very well be looking at its third straight loss. And if they're not able to score some points, this one could get out of hand if they're not able to try to keep up and try to match that Pitt offense.
Yeah, honestly, I don't see how Clemson wins this game. I'm trying to find the areas in which that they could come out on top, but I just think Pittsburgh's offense is way too explosive for Clemson's offense to keep up with right now. It's a very, very scary game. I think it could get kind of ugly. I think this is potentially a 16, 17-point game in favor of Pittsburgh. And I don't even feel like that's me necessarily going out on a limb. I haven't seen enough from Clemson's offense to make me feel confident that they're going to be able to keep up with Pittsburgh in this game. I think it could get a little bit out of hand, throwing the fact that they're heading all the way up to Pittsburgh. What kind of conditions are going to be there, kind of remains to be seen. The injuries that Clemson's dealing with right now, especially on defense, and the unknown timetables for a couple of their guys. And I mean, honestly, the only thing that's making me feel really 100% confident in this pick is that Pittsburgh lost at home to Western Michigan. I don't know what that was. Like on a pretty much flawless season thus far for them, they had that hiccup there. So, yeah, I mean, and I'm just going to throw in real quick. I mean, it's not a Pitt team that's unbeatable. Like, they went to Tennessee and they won, but it wasn't necessarily a great performance, particularly defensively. They had some struggles. Like you mentioned, they gave up 44 points to Western Michigan at home. Clemson obviously has a lot more talent than Western Michigan. And look, I mean, this will be by far the best defense Pitt has seen all year. I mean, even with the guys Clemson has out, it's still an elite defense. It's still a defense that's one of the best in the country. So, I think the hope for Clemson is, you somehow find a way to score in the 20s and try to keep Pitt in the 20s and, win another close game is the hope. So I don't think it's for sure, like a guaranteed loss or anything like that. But I do think that you're going to have to find a way to score more than 20 points in regulation, which hasn't happened yet this year. I think the part that scares me the most about this game when looking at it from Clemson's viewpoint is that I'm not necessarily looking back at that Syracuse game. I don't think Garrett Trader is lighting up the world on fire due to passing attack. But what Boston College was able to do to that defense with Andrew Booth at home, through the air, they put up over 300 yards with their backup quarterback. And you have Kenny Pickett, who's playing, in terms of statistics and production, some of the best football at quarterback in the nation. So that's the part that I really feel the most nervous about. I mean, do I think Clemson will be able to get more than 20 points? Yeah, but do I think they're going to explode for 35, 40? No, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think really depending on what happens with Booth, whether he's going to be there or not, that could make it a little bit more worse. If I was to make a score prediction right now, early on, I'd probably say 31-27 Pittsburgh. I think that's even giving Clemson a little bit too many points there. I haven't seen enough from the offense to make me feel confident just yet in this game. If it was at home, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable for sure. I may be even more inclined to pick Clemson, but yeah, I'm expecting them to lose this game here early on.
Yeah, and I want to see what happens Saturday with Pitt as well. I mean, I want to see how Yeah. I mean, this podcast will come out after that game's over, but I do want to see how they play in that matchup. Just that's a tough road game for them. So maybe the offense struggles a little bit. Maybe outside of Pickett and Addison. They're not able to do much, which is, kind of been the case this year. They've had some complementary pieces step up at wideout so far. But yeah, just kind of want to see what happens there too before I make a pick and really dive into watching a couple other Pitt games in full. I mean, I caught some of the Georgia Tech game, but need to go back and watch some of it too to see how it got out of hand.
Yeah, I want to make sure that wasn't an official prediction by me, 31-27. I'm going to wait a little bit more to make that official prediction and just see what the injuries are like. But for right now, I'm expecting Pittsburgh to win that game. Final thing before we wrap up this podcast, Matt. If you were Dabo Swinney, let's say you're the head coach of Clemson, the Clemson Tigers football team. What changes would you make? What would be the biggest change that you would make going forward? This is probably a question we should have asked last week in the bye week episode, because it's hard to make these changes now that you're back into the groove. But what change would you make right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think the staff has tried a lot of things already. This past week they go under center some and start doing that. It's crazy. They went from couldn't do a quarterback sneak a few weeks ago to now they're lining up, going under center and having some success and running it right at teams. So I thought that was good. I think we'll see more of that moving forward. And then Clemson kept it pretty basic yesterday when it was under center, but wouldn't be surprised to see a little play action pass type stuff off of that later on down the road. I think it's just trying to pick your spots when to be too picky, or I'm sorry, too tricky. They were running the ball well against Syracuse, kind of slowly working down the field. Had a 2nd and 3 set up in good field position. Try to play action pass. Guy got beat blocking up front, and now it's a sack, and now you're looking at 3rd and long, and you end up punting when you were in the middle of putting together a good drive. So, man, maybe just sticking a little more with what's working, not being afraid to just – and I know it's not the way Clemson's used to winning games, and I know it's not how they want to win games, but just being a little more conservative maybe and just kind of taking your time with these slow, methodical drives. But if it's working and you're getting 5, 6, 7 yards a carry, just keep doing it and then pick your spots where you want to try to get tricky. I mean, they tried the throwback pass to the tight end that lost yards because it wasn't blocked properly. They had some penalties on some plays like that where guys are trying to get out and make blocks and struggling to. So it's tough, man. I mean, I feel like the staff's tried a lot, and not a whole lot has worked. One thing that did work, the punter pass, Will Spires,
to Davis Allen.
Davis Allen. Yeah, what'd you think of that play and that call?
So yeah, I didn't really like that play at all. I mean, if you're going to go for it on 4th down, 4th and 4, you would prefer for your offense to be out there, even though they really haven't been clicking. As we've mentioned before, you would probably want those guys to be out there. And it wasn't like this was a wide open play and Davis Allen just ran down the field or anything like that. I mean, this was a tough contested catch that could have easily been batted down. It was just a fantastic play by Allen, but it isn't one that you want to continue to run. I found that one to be a little bit surprising. I mean, if you're going to take chances, don't take that kind of chance. I mean, everything really just worked perfectly for that play to work the way it did. A perfect pass by Spires and an excellent grab by Davis Allen, but that's not one that should ever be run again. Oh,
it's I don't know, man. I mean, it's hard to argue with the result. I know it wasn't perfectly drawn up. It was funny. I had people tweeting at me that maybe Clemson should just go to the punt formation as its basic offensive formation after that. So it was a nice little fake pump fake and all that kind of stuff to set it up. So the defense didn't really fall for it, but it was still worth a shot. But yeah, it worked. And I'll touch on one more thing before we wrap up. Just I thought something you mentioned was important, and that's that even the play that worked, even this play that worked where you're picking up the yardage, it takes a great throw by a punter and a tight end going up and making a grab and double coverage to keep a drive alive. You look at the touchdown grab from Joseph Ngata was on a 3rd and long, and he goes up and just makes a ridiculous catch and somehow is able to get his foot down in bounds. The other pass that set up a touchdown is Justin Ross going over the middle and high pointing the ball and getting way up in the air and bringing a tough catch down in traffic and holding on after taking a hit. So, even the plays that worked and even the plays that either scored or led to scores, it wasn't like there was some it was like an easy score or anything like that. I mean, every single yard Clemson was trying to get, it was really having to work for. And so, I think that's something that's just in some ways discouraging as well. Is like, man, you look at the 17 points they scored, and it's not like, they busted up some big plays and had huge runs or anything like that. I mean, it was making insane grabs and insane catches and having your punter throw a great pass and your tight end making a catch in double coverage just to try to get to 17. So it's a concern, man, for sure.
And the funny thing is, you mentioned those three guys who made those spectacular plays: Davis Allen, Justin Ross, Joe Ngata. They had drops throughout the game too. Like, it's the fundamentals, and you mentioned this before, just need to be established, and they need to work on doing that right before you can get to those big splashy plays because everyone loves those plays. They love the highlight plays, but for me, you take 10 consistent, well-run, fundamentally sound plays over any of those plays that you just saw there, because that's what wins you the game. They had those 3 plays right there, but at the end of the day, Syracuse was a field goal away from tying it and sending it to overtime. So I don't know what to make of this offense, Matt. They have all the talent. Every single game that they've gone up against an opponent besides the Georgia game, they have clearly had more talent than each and every one of their, every one of their opponents, individual matchups, all of that kind of stuff. It's just a weird, it's a weird season. Don't know how to put a finger on it, but yeah, let's wrap up everything, Matt. We're approaching, I believe, about 45 minutes here. So let's get on going, wrap everything up. As always, we're going to plug our social media and go follow us on Twitter at Clemson Sports HQ. Follow us on Facebook or like the Facebook page. I don't know necessarily the whole terminology. You're more into social media than I am, Matt. So go ahead on Facebook and give us a like there. And then also go ahead and follow us on our content at clemsonsports.com. We're continuing to run our great deal, $10 for a whole year of access, premium access, message board access, all of that great stuff. Or if you just want to try it out for 4 months, finish off the season, maybe dip into basketball season, pay $1. I mean, that, we're continuing to run that deal, so take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. You can't beat that deal. You've been crushing it with recruiting coverage. A lot more coming this week. We'll keep having film reviews and all kinds of game breakdowns and team analysis and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely encourage people to follow along and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.
Go ahead, do it. Yeah. The subscribe button is like right underneath my finger there. So go ahead and subscribe, turn on notifications, click that like button. And until next time, we'll see you all then. If you made the trip up to Syracuse, have a safe drive back down. And we'll see you all for this upcoming week of press conferences and coverage.